China, you brought up early in the interview. I hate to pivot back to this, but I do want to get some clarity from this. And I think one good thing the tariffs have done, the Chinese are, whether it's propaganda or not, my Instagram now is nothing but Chinese electric vehicles. I've been ranting to them for days now. I'm like, oh, these guys are so far ahead of us. They have people coming forward. Andrew sent us an Instagram today of someone from China saying, hey, you know what happened? These billionaires in America took all this money, kept it for themselves. In China, they built up the infrastructure. I don't know if any of that is true, but it does seem like this is a very real threat. And it does seem like they're ahead in certain ways that we might not be ready to catch up for. Yeah. What can we do? As I'm asking you to think, because it's obvious you understand 1 year, 5 year goal like needs very well. 10, 20, 30 years. And when you said it's important for Americans to be number one. 30 years from now, how are we number one? What's your ideas for that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really tough for America to stay number one unless we do certain things right away. First of all, it's back to basics. It's taking care of our own infrastructure, our own education system. It's making it easier and more affordable to raise a family here. Just like all those core things that you don't think of as like international policy. Yeah. But if you do them right, then you get international primacy the same way that like part of how we won the Cold War and beat the Soviet Union. It wasn't obviously like there was a military side of that, but like their military was formidable too, right? The real like inarguable massive advantage we had was that there were way more people living in the Soviet Union who wished they were living American lives than anybody in America wishing they could live a Soviet life, right? On some level, I think that was everything. That was how America truly came to be number one. So first of all, take care of the basics at home. But also, we need to recognize that we're going into a ferociously competitive world stage here, where we can't just keep trading off the glories of having won World War II, which is pretty much how we were able to build the international system the way we like it over the 50 years that followed. And recognize that every country is not like just on its own finding its way toward liberal democracy. That comes and goes. I believe it's actually on the wane in our country, and I'm trying to do something about it. But it's eroding in places like Hungary. A lot of places were more democratic 10 years ago than they are now. So we've got to recognize that this is going to require a level of investment in technology and a level of commitment to our values that both earns friends and establishes the kind of economic power that you need in order to, alongside your military power, in order to be number one. I really worry that what we're in right now is a mode that's going to make it not so much America first has to be America in first place. To do it right. Yeah. If it's America first the way they're doing it, I think it means America alone. And we become just like another country out there, scrapping for advantage. But to your point about China, like, one of the things that the last administration did that I believe in is dealing with Chinese EV, unfair competition from the Chinese EV market. We should be making those here. The other part of the story that I was telling you about Indiana, Howard County, where those Chrysler jobs were, and St. Joe County, where I grew up, and a lot of places in Michigan where I live now, is the EV battery factories. Like there is a $3 or $4 billion GM battery factory going up on the western edge of the county where I grew up that is bigger than any manufacturing investment that happened there in my entire life. China is making big bets in EV. It's not because I don't believe the Chinese Communist Party is terribly concerned about being first in climate change, right? They understand the geostrategic implications of owning the 21st century vehicle market the way we did the last century. So is that an example of where it could be appropriate to use tariffs? Absolutely. But again, we got to know what we're doing.
And maybe this is touching on what Andrew was saying earlier about build a wall. Can you give me an idea of something you would want to do? And again, this might be exactly what you were saying. What's something you would do to make me feel better as a guy who's looking at them and being like, oh, 600-mile batteries and fucking floating on air or whatever. What is an idea you would have? It's like, just in the global scale, how America can compete.
You mean like a tech idea?
Or just, this factory can go up that would create these jobs. Just kind of anything that I could grasp at to feel some hope.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we can do the clean tech stuff better. But
better than them, or
better
just
than
better? Okay.
Both.
Clean
better than
tech,
we have.
What does that mean? Like
anything like from electric vehicles to solar energy installations, all that stuff. We can do it better, but we have to make a commitment as a country that we are going to invest in that. It doesn't just happen. There's this fiction that all of the things we see around us in the marketplace just came around without any policy choices. there were huge policy choices that made the automobile possible in this country. Subsidies on everything from fossil fuels to the interstate highway system, right? We need to make similar choices around owning the clean tech market for the future, owning AI. Like, I think we have a real problem with China could very well legitimately outpace us on AI if we let them. And getting AI right is not just for the tiny proportion of people who understand how to code large language models and stuff that I can't even get my head around. It's making sure that as a society, like, part of our education is like people understand how to deal with AI the same way that, like, you can't say somebody's educated and can graduate into the workplace if they don't know how to use email. Or, it's a competency more than like a technical expertise. Which is why I was a little bit alarmed when I found out that our U.S. Education Secretary today thinks there's something called A1, and read a speech about how we need to do more with clearly not a lot of conceptual.
Instead of AI?
Holy shit.
Oh, wow.
I think she's just like reading a prompter.
We're
Is
fucking
this
cooked,
Linda
dog.
McMahon?
Yeah.
We're cooked.
Yeah, right? I'm not making this up,
no,
right?
Linda.
It's over.
Yeah, like we need to make sure that
Passport.
We got to
in a
make
world
education
where-
A1. That's what she
A1,
does.
yeah.
We got to make it A1.
I mean, so, you're right to be worried.
Yeah.
Me personally, sorry.
yeah, no,
you
go
can
ahead.
finish. Me
I know you
personally,
got to get out of here, Pete.
Yeah,
so
sorry. Here's my
will
last one. I think the biggest issue facing America is the wage gap. Salaries have been stagnant.
this is huge.
CEO
Yeah.
pays
Yes.
have skyrocketed. How can we convince corporations to pay higher salaries when their responsibility is to stockholders?
Well, it can't just be pretty please. I mean, this is where if the corporation, we have to either change the incentives on the front end so that there are tax advantages to taking better care of your people, or we have to be ready to do it through policy where this country says you're going to make $100 billion in wealth off of work that 100,000 people working for you generated. More of that needs to be going to them. And by the way, these things are actually related. I think there's a way to deal in American citizens on kind of like a dividend off of the value that's being created from AI and from, I don't want to take it down a whole rabbit hole, but if you imagine.
UBI kind of thing?
How's that?
Like a universal basic income kind of thing?
It could be. There's different ways to structure it. But I think it's giving everybody a share in the overall value that's being created by technologies, which again rest on technologies that the taxpayer paid for in the first place back in the 60s. So why shouldn't we all get a share?
we're investing it.
Instead of it all going to this tiny handful of super, super wealthy people who are consolidating their own power. The same way the president's consolidating his political power. You got these I don't even just like normal billionaires, but like mega billionaires consolidating their power, right? We have to have a tax policy that does that. We have to have a system that requires people who amass that kind of wealth to be sharing it with citizens. Because again, I know there's this myth. Look, I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs who create things, and they should be hugely rewarded when they create things that are valuable. But they created those things based partly on infrastructure that all of us paid for, right? And by infrastructure, I don't just mean roads and bridges. I mean national security. I mean things like inventing the internet or mRNA vaccine technology or whatever it is. But more broadly, and this is both on the substance and the politics, I think you're naming something that's hugely important, which is the inequality in this country. It doesn't get talked about enough. It has gotten worse pretty much our entire lives.
Yeah.
And no republic has ever survived this level of inequality for long and remained a republic. That kind of income inequality leads to inequality in power, which leads to political instability, which leads to some of the things I think we're experiencing right now as a country. And if we don't get a handle on that, and it can absolutely be dealt with in a way that is consistent with a strong economy and business doing well. We know that because there were times in our history, including the middle of the last century, when tax policy was asking more of the wealthiest. And also there was a lot of economic growth and a lot of productivity growth. So it can be done. The other thing that nobody talks about in either party much is poverty. Like you may notice in political rhetoric, like people, middle class, you're always supposed to say middle class. You always talk about the middle. Can't go wrong talking about the middle class. But not a lot of folks are talking about like poor and low wealth people, which depending how you count is more than 100 million Americans.
Jeez.
And by the way, is an experience that binds together a lot of people who are divided in terms of first generation immigrants, white, black, and brown people and so forth. And one of the things that should be the starkest wake-up call for my party is the idea of losing the vote of poor people.
Yep.
Because if we're not winning the vote of poor people, like, what are we even doing out here? Right.
Yep.
And
Or what are you?
we don't really talk about poverty.
Yep.
Or that kind of insecurity that people go through.
Yeah. Or like, what are you promoting or seemingly promoting, or what are the Republicans projecting to you that you're promoting that they are so against that they will reject whatever you endeavor to do to help them with their poverty?
Yeah.
Meaning there might be another thing out there that is equally or potentially more important.
Right. Which is why the way to
focus on.
not talk to low-income people or union people, members or anybody else, is to say like, oh, well, you're voting against your own self-interest.
It's like, how are you going to tell me what I'm interested in?
Yeah, but also like, you can picture like well-paid professional from I don't know, somewhere near where we're sitting in New York City, like going up to a union member who is living near where I live in Michigan, and if that person from New York says like, you're voting against your self-interest, that guy can turn around and say, so are you.
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
So it has to. It goes back to this respect.
But when that person, the coastal elite, does it, we're doing it because we're benevolent. I'm so heroic. I'm voting against my own interests for little old you. That's the idea, right?
Well, if it looks and feels like that, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah,
That could be there's one thing, and then I know you got to go. Yeah. But the guy who does all our partnerships here, one of my best friends, his name is Jamil, and he was working in England for a while. And when he came back after working in England for a while, he found out the American government was like, "Yo, but even though you worked over there, you still got to pay us tax." And he was like, "What do you mean? I was working, I wasn't working." He's, "Yeah, but you're an American, so even if you have a job abroad for a company abroad, you have to pay their tax, but you still got to pay us tax because you're American." If him as an employee has to do that, Apple got to do it.
Very good.
Google's got to do it. Anybody else out there. It just cannot be that unfair. If there's that much transparency for the average, he wasn't working for an American company over there. Actually, I'm not exactly sure what the company was, if it was American.
I think it was
Was an American company. But the idea that he had to pay taxes out there and he also had to pay American taxes, then that company should have to do the exact same thing. And I don't know how you implement that. I understand it's tricky. And I understand these guys are paying tens of millions of dollars to these like attorneys that are just tax code nerds that are trying to find the loopholes. I've spoken to some of these guys and I've spoken to some hedge fund dudes that were literally like, listen, we could try to find ways to make money in the market. It's easier to attack the tax code.
Yeah.
They literally told me that
That's
like,
where the money is.
The money is attacking the tax code, not the market.
And again, not to like repeat myself too many times, but this could be about, it might be that this is about to get much worse because there is a debate happening like right now, like through this summer in Congress, where I think there's a lot of people who hope that no one's paying too close attention to the tax changes and the tax cuts that they're about to put in. So this is a great time to hold members of Congress accountable. Because I do think, even if you live in a very Republican area and you got a Republican member of Congress, like most people in that district don't love the idea of skewing the tax code even more toward corporations and wealthy people. Like there's a real moment here, I think, to do something about that.
I mean, that's something that would, and I don't understand the wording, but to what we were speaking before, like speaking to people's feelings, like finding a way to effectively tax these corporations, which would reduce taxes on working class people, finding a way to turn that into one sentence, but letting a working class person know that they're going to pay 20% less because we found a way for these corporations to honor what their tax burden should be. I mean, when Trump or when Doge or whatever was saying, maybe it was Lutnick was talking about the tariffs and they're like, yeah, well, yes, the goods are going to be more expensive and it's going to be more expensive for everyday people. But with the money that the tariffs bring in, we're actually going to remove the income tax for people making under $150,000 a year. Whether or not they do that, that is fresh meat for somebody who's going, I make under $100,000 a year, and that is a huge burden on me, and I can provide for my kids so much better. They can go to that camp that they
But what people got to understand is the reality is the tariffs are absolutely a shift of the tax burden onto the lowest income people, right?
100%.
So like they're talking a good game. Yeah,
they're saying they're going to offset it with, but they're saying they're going to offset that burden with the money that comes in for the tariffs, regardless if they actually implement this or not. I hope that you guys come up with strategies that sound just as seductive and then intend to execute them And what a competitive advantage you would have if you're saying these guys are all talk. They say the nice shit, but they don't really do it. Well, we're not all talk. We're going to say nice shit and we're delivering on it. And here's why. How can you lose? You'll never lose. But give me some nice shit. Sell me on something. You know what I mean? Like,
I hear that.
we need it. Anyway, thank you so much for being here, man. This was awesome.
Thank you so much.